This episode of Bulletproof Cash Flow is brought to you by Realty Dynamics. Learn how people like you can build substantial passive income while creating wealth for the long term through real estate investing. Visit rdyne.com. That's RDYNE.com.
With the interest rates, going up for sure, it's, making it a little bit, the debt to income ratio of people is starting to change when they're applying for these and they can't afford as much. So that's having an impact on sales. So it's like, there's definitely not a crash, but we're definitely seeing prices soften a little bit, prices come down a little bit. But honestly, rents are still going up. That's the wild thing.
Working because you want to, not because you have to, is financial freedom. And we want to help you create that. Welcome to the Bulletproof Cash Flow Show. We're going to teach you how to achieve lifetime financial freedom through real estate investment. Your host is a multifamily syndicator and property developer. He's done deals reaching into the hundreds of millions of dollars. You'll hear from experts in all aspects of real estate investment, finance, development, and management. Everything you need is right here. This is the Bulletproof Cash Flow Show. And this is your host, Augustino Pintus.
Hey everyone, it's Augustino. Now, if you've been following the show for any length of time, you know that I talk about how real estate investing will give you the time and the money to live life on your own terms. Now, one of the things that real estate can also do is secure the lives of your family and build legacy wealth. Now, our next guest knows all about this. As a young adult, he was diagnosed with a terminal melanoma and was given just 6 months to live. Now, having a wife and kids, this immediately kickstarted the very real need to ensure that his family's future was secured. And, as tough as the idea that was, something you have to think about. Now, him and his wife, they turned to real estate to secure that future. And then since then, his team has done a lot. Aside from being a licensed real estate broker himself, he is an active real estate investor, co-founder of Real Wealth. It's a real estate investment group that helps its 60,000 plus members improve their financial intelligence, secure passive income, and obtain financial freedom. He's also the author of the book, The Wise Investor, a modern parable about creating financial freedom and living your best life, which I recommend highly. Check out that book. It's a great, great book. Now, with all that, I'd like to welcome Rich Fettke to the show. Rich, buddy, thanks for coming on, man.
Hey, thanks for having me. Love it.
Yes, excellent. Now, guys, like Rich has to say, you can reach him via his contact page at fettke.com. We'll put a link in the description as well. Okay, Rich, go ahead and tell the listeners a little bit about your journey.
Yeah, you shared a little bit of it, but it's, so I'll go back to then. It was, I was 20 years ago, actually. I was 37 years old. I had this amazing wife, 2 wonderful daughters. I had a thriving business coaching practice, and I had just signed a book deal with Simon & Schuster. So I was totally on top of my game, feeling awesome, feeling great, like unstoppable, And then, I was diagnosed with melanoma, and the doctor thought it had spread to my liver based on some scans. And so I met with an oncologist, and he just looked up at me and said, it looks like it has spread to your liver. You probably have about 6 months to live. So it was just a punch in the gut. It was, a lot of tears and despair and frustration and all that. And just realizing I might not be able to see my daughters grow up and all that. It was a big blow. And Kathy, my wife, was a stay-at-home mom at the time. And so she had to find a way to make ends meet if I died. So she basically rallied, and she started to seek out mentors to find out how she could create finance, bring in some money. And it was interesting because the mentors that she sought out taught her about real estate investing, because that's where they had made their money. No surprise to us, right? So she got excited about this. She started to learn about investing. And then in the meantime, thankfully, the doctor's diagnosis was wrong. The melanoma had not spread to my liver. So the 3 months of not knowing and being very scared of what was going to happen was the impetus for us to get into real estate investing. So we got out, we started to invest. We actually invested out of California because it's hard to cash flow in California. So we went to north of Dallas in a little town called Rockwall. We bought 5 investment properties out there, and that was our path, and that was our foray into real estate investing. And then we started to have friends and family and people come and saying, how are you doing this? How are you doing it out of state? And so Kathy and I decided to form what we thought would be a small group of friends and investors to support each other and to help people, kind of guide the way. And that little group that we thought would be maybe 100 people or 200 people has grown to, like you said, now it's, I think we're over 64,000 members today at Real Wealth that we've helped people get into an investment properties. And we also syndicate now. Nice.
It's funny that I think the older you get, the more, well, at least for me anyway, the older I get, the more I realize that time's running out. It's running out for all of us. I think as you get older, you realize that fuse is getting shorter and shorter, right? And in your case, it took, you're still fairly young, but it took that little kickstart to really realize, like, oh man, I really got to get things going. And you guys jumped into action. It's somewhat unfortunate though that sometimes it's what it takes to get people to move, right? To realize, okay, now you're going to have X amount of time left. What are you going to do with this X amount of time? Mm-hmm. And most people just sit around and watch TV and don't do what needs to be done to build their future, right? That's probably one of the biggest things I notice whenever I coach folks. It's just that. And really, in your case, you guys just jumped into action and immediately got to work, and before realizing that they misdiagnosed it. But thankfully, of course, they did that. But at that point, you're already well on your way, right?
Yeah, it's like in every curse, there's a blessing, right? As they say. Yeah. And so, that was a blessing. It was definitely felt like a curse, and it was, very painful and scary, and it really took the wind out of my sails. But at the same time, it was that blessing that, pushed us into action to start investing and start learning. And and like you said, I think most people spend most of their time focused on entertainment. Yep. Instead of education. And so I know a lot for us, it flipped things around. We're like, okay, we got to get educated. We need to learn how to do this. Like I said, Kathy seeked out mentors. And still today, Kathy and I are very committed to educating ourselves, to growing, to learning, and sharing that with our network. So constantly, that's, providing free education. It's been our big focus as a company.
Yes. Tell us a little bit about Real Wealth these days. Like, obviously, huge group, wildly successful. I've interviewed Kathy here on the show years ago. I should probably have her back on here again soon. Mm. So what are you guys doing these days? How do you guys help these investors? Is it, aside from coaching, are they also coming in on your deals? Are they also taking part in other events? Like, how are you guys helping these guys out?
Sure. Yeah. So ever since the beginning in 2003, when we formed the company, we decided that we wanted to be the anti-guru. We wanted to never do the back of the room sales, never hawk high price programs or anything like that. So we've always given our education away for free. We've produced over almost 1,000 webinars now, free educational webinars, thousands of Real Wealth Show podcasts and all that. So, and even our investment counselor sessions are free. The way we monetize it and the way we work is we have property teams and brokers around the country who are experienced, who have inventory available, quality inventory available, and we refer our investors when they're ready to these property teams and to these brokers so they can acquire mostly single family 1 to 4 units around the country that cash flow, that makes sense from day one, that have property management in place. And so most of the people that come to Real Wealth are busy professionals. They want to invest, but they don't have the time to do it themselves. They can't do the DIY thing. They're not sure how to find quality investment properties, and especially out of state. So that's the way we help them on that side of things. And then we also develop. Since 2010, we started to syndicate and do ground up residential development. So we have current projects. We have one going on Park City, in Bozeman, Montana, up in Reno, Nevada. So ground up residential development where we just syndicate. So it's a group investment. So our investors can be part of that and, team up with us as investors on these projects. Nice.
So on these smaller deals from the singles to the quads, you guys are taking care of the whole thing. It's like a turnkey type of setup, right? Where they can buy the asset. You guys will handle any type of turns, management, the whole 9 yards, right?
Yeah. So I'm a licensed broker in California, so I can refer our members to other brokers, and that's where we're paid just like any broker. I get a broker-to-broker referral fee for helping them find quality investors and quality leads. So we do the education, we refer them. So they're separate companies. We don't do any of the management. We don't even source those properties. What we do is we go out and we meet the boots on the ground. We send someone out to kind of vet, not to kind of vet them, but to vet them thoroughly, see what kind of experience these property teams and brokers have. They go through their properties and they look at, if it's a rehab, the quality of the rehab. If it's a new build, they look at the quality of the new build and the area and the demographics, and to really see what's driving people there. So to make sure it's a solid market to refer to. And yeah, so it's pretty much, we don't use the term turnkey because we think that's been thrown around too much over the years, where, turnkey is like, we've seen some pretty crappy turnkey properties, so we decided to kind of create a standard. So we call it our real income property standard. So it's, it fits these categories of standards of what we expect and what we'll refer someone to.
Hey, Agostino here, and I would love to connect directly with you. Text the word books to 844-428-1344 to receive weekly book recommendations from me. Yeah, it sounds to me like, obviously, and you mentioned this already, you touched on this. This is real estate investing for busy professionals, of which, these are folks that they're interested in real estate, they're interested in building wealth, they're interested in cash flow, but not necessarily to get out there and start, tearing down walls and dealing with all the messy part, unfortunately, that comes with real estate. So aside from that, though, who is specifically your avatar that is investing with getting into these deals then?
A lot of them, that single avatar usually is someone who owns one investment property already. So they have a little bit of experience. Maybe that what they've done, they've sold their home and they moved to a new home, and they move into a new home and they keep their old home and they turn it into a rental. It's kind of like that. And they're like, so they understand being a landlord, but they're doing the property management themselves, and they want to branch out. They want to get better cash flow. A lot of them, our investors in the beginning, were for California, so they wanted to invest out of California. But honestly, today it's more of the Henrys. Have you heard that term? The high earners, not rich yet. There's
a term for everything now. I've never heard of this one. Henrys. Okay, all right.
Yeah. So it's the high earners, not rich yet. So there are people who are making a solid 6-figure income. They're maxing out their 401k, but their lifestyle is exceeding their income, and they're not putting their money to work for them. They're not investing it, or a lot of them are invested in the stock market, and they want to escape the volatility of the stock market or a crypto. They want a solid asset that's going to bring in those benefits of owning rental property. And so a lot of those people kind of making the transition, out of only being in the stock market, wanting to get into a solid asset that's going to be a hedge against inflation, where they're going to get the appreciation, the monthly cash flow, they're going to get the tax benefits. Once they realize all the benefits of being invested in real estate, they're just the lights come on and they're like, oh, I want to do this. I want to put together a portfolio.
Yeah. Well, since you're investing outside of California, so I imagine you have some favorite states that are not necessarily like California, right?
very, very much. Yeah. Definitely. Southeast and the South tend to be the major markets for sure. We're in Cleveland, we're in Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We have 5 different property teams and brokers in Florida. Florida's been really hot and just a great place to invest. It's been really good for our investors. Dallas and Houston, North Carolina. So those are the main markets that we're in right now. It's kind of ever shifting. It all depends where the population's moving.
Yeah. Here in Cleveland, for instance, I've already seen a slight shift when it comes to the single family stuff. We were talking in the green room a bit ago of how some of these houses, the cost of these single families, but I've started to see them trend a little bit downward, or another little bit longer on the market than when they used to be. Would you say the same thing's happening in other markets as well?
Absolutely. With the interest rates, going up for sure, it's, making it a little bit, the debt to income ratio of people is starting to change when they're applying for these, and they can't afford as much. So that's having an impact on sales. So it's there's definitely not a crash, but we're definitely seeing prices soften a little bit, prices come down a little bit. But honestly, rents are still going up. That's the wild thing. We're definitely seeing there's even bidding wars for rents now. It's really crazy times. So it's a good time to be a landlord.
Yeah, yeah. Now, what would you say is happening in Florida then? I mean, I've seen the same thing happen in Florida to some extent in terms of like the price for assets. Especially, well, we're looking at hotels too. I didn't mention that in the green room, but we're looking at hotels. We're looking at looking beyond multifamily. So we're seeing definitely some price changes when it comes to all these types of physical assets, including the single family and small multifamily space. Probably not the same as like the Midwest, but it's still changing. Are you seeing the same sort of thing that's happening in Florida as well? Is that an exception or anything, or what?
Yeah, I'm definitely seeing some changing. It's like days on market has definitely increased, but there's such a lack of inventory that it's not having a major hit on pricing, especially like talking about Florida. It's just in Tampa. We have one property team in Tampa, and just last year, property prices went up 43%. So it's like, it just can't continue that way. It's insane. So more of a leveling off than a decrease in price. Just kind of a cooling off. It's not, instead of just ramping up like that, it's just kind of starting to get a little flatter, but we haven't seen a big or any decrease right now in those markets, especially in Florida. But rent's going up still. Yeah,
exactly. And I'm seeing the same sort of thing where in other markets, there's always there's a general slowdown taking place in other markets. You can really see it. But in Florida, and the usual suspects, Florida, Texas, right, where they're still getting the influx of folks coming in, there's a slowdown, there's a leveling off, but not nearly like it is in other places. Not nearly like it's in other places.
And it's just because prices have gone up so much. It's getting more difficult to cash flow. So now it's like there's kind of some dancing in the moment with, both with financing and doing more like construction to perm loans is really hot right now. So it's so many new builds. So a lot of people are getting into these construction to perm loans, single close loans, so they can make it work financially. And there's even talk of, you've probably heard this, there's even talk of extending loan terms. Instead of 30 years, they're talking about going to a 40-year loan term, interest only, all that stuff. So to make it more affordable. A lot of people are doing, getting into the short-term rental, like you looking at hotels, same type of thing, that hospitality market.
Yeah. Sounds like 2008, doesn't it? A little bit.
In a way, yeah, it does sound like it. Thank God it's not the same. It's a completely different market, but we know that.
Yeah, exactly. So, what do you think's going to be coming up here with any changes in terms of the economy? I know we talked a little bit about that earlier, but what is your general impression about how things are going to go down in the next, say, 24 or 48 months?
Well, I think we will see a recession. The Fed is very clear on we will create a recession. That's what they want, and the Fed usually gets what they want because they have a lot of control and power over it. So I think we will see a recession. I don't see a 2008. Being married to Kathy Fettke is pretty awesome because, she's on the market, the Bigger Pockets podcast, which is always looking at headline news and what's going on. And she's always connected with these incredible experts and financial forecasters and economists and all that she interviews on her podcast and for the On the Market podcast. So it's pretty cool to be able to be around her and kind of go up to her office door and listen and get the updates of what's happening. So I default to her usually on my assessment of the economy, and that's basically what she's saying. There will be a recession. It's not going to be a big thing like 2008. There's not going to be this huge foreclosure or people walking away because so many people are locked in. I think it's 93% of homeowners are now on an interest rate that's under 4% and in a 30-year fix. So why would anyone want to walk away? It's not like it was in 2008 when there were people on these arms and they were, they just couldn't afford it. And they had these no income, no assets, loans and all that stuff. So it's a it's just it's a different world.
Right. It's a different world. I mean, and I think back in 2008 too, there's a lot of illegal activity that was taking place too. There's a lot of bad actors, just a lot of bad actors just trying to pump up the numbers. So
yeah, they were influenced and inspired to do that. Kathy was a mortgage broker back then, and it was wild. There was someone who came in and she got this loan application. She put it in to underwriting, and they said, no, they don't make enough income. So the broker in her office went and changed it and said, oh, we'll just up their income. She's like, can you do that? He goes, oh, yeah, puts it in. And they got it. It's like, isn't that fraud? But yeah, a lot of bad actors from the high level.
Just a little bit of fraud.
Crazy. Yeah. So the good thing is, I think we're in a different world. I think we all learned a lot from that. It was a lot of lack of awareness back then. So I think it's a different world.
Yes.
At least I hope.
Yes, yeah, I think so too. I want to take a pause from today's show to share something that I've been encountering. As I speak to many investors, there's this concern, and the concern is centered around the inflation we've been experiencing and the devaluation of our currency. Now, we've seen some of the highest inflationary periods over the past 30 years. That's up over 8%. Economists actually believe that inflation is closer to 20%. Some say it's even more. Now, what does this mean for you? Well, it means that money that is sitting in your bank account or self-directed IRA that's not invested in physical assets that hedge against inflation are losing buying power. That means that every minute, every second, that dollar is becoming less valuable. You see this every day. You see this in the groceries you buy, the gasoline you buy, everyday items that you're buying on a daily basis are becoming more and more expensive, and you're using a less powerful dollar to buy these items. Meaning that dollar is losing value if it isn't put into a property that produces cash flow, just like real estate does. Now, our team here at Bulletproof Cash Flow has put together a series of weekly webinars that cover real estate investing like multifamily, net lease, and real estate development. Now, these are purely educational webinars. In these webinars, we talk about why real estate offers a powerful opportunity right now and why it makes sense to invest in these assets today. So if you're interested in real estate or want to have the opportunity to get involved as a hedge against inflation yourself, I encourage you to go to bulletproofcashflow.com/webinars. That's bulletproofcashflow.com/webinars. Now you go there, these webinars are 45 minutes and they cover different topics every week. We go over the things you need to know to avoid some of the common pitfalls when it comes to investing while getting you prepared to invest your paper dollars into a real physical asset. Now, if you can't make the webinars, just go ahead and register and we will send you a recording that you can watch at any time. And by the way, these webinars are entirely free. There's no cost to you. This is just something that we do to educate our folks out there. So if you're enjoying this episode, please like and subscribe to Bulletproof Cash Flow. It helps the channel tremendously when you do. Now let's go ahead and get back to the show. So let's shift the attention to your book now. So your book came out in April. So The Wise Investor. So let's talk. Can you talk a little bit about the process of coming out with this new book, like the writing of it, the preparing of it, everything? I know we talked a little bit about it earlier, but it's somewhat entertaining. If you can just fill us in on that one.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's interesting. 20 years later, right? My second book comes out. I've been pretty busy over the last 20 years running Real Wealth. So it was actually my coach. I have a coach I talk to every other Friday, and I've been working with him for almost 10 years now, and he had read my first book. So in our coaching sessions, every once in a while, he would get this little, question about like, when's your next book going to come out? And I'm like, yeah, someday, maybe not. I think I wrote my book. But then we started to apply story branding to our company. Have you heard of that? Story branding?
Sure.
Yeah. And Don Miller.
Yeah.
So Don Miller wrote this great book called Building a Story Brand. And it's all about basically the way you write your story for your business is not you being the hero, as so many businesses do, saying like, look at us, we did this. It's about your customers, the hero, which is so true. And so it's really putting the focus on the hero in the hero's journey, and the company, us, is the guide. We're the guide who has the experience and can help people get from where they are to where they want to be. And so I got obsessed with this whole story writing thing and the hero's journey and Joseph Campbell's work. And so one day in a coaching session, I said something to my coach, like, if I was going to write a book, probably want to write a story because I'm really into the story writing thing. And that was the seed. And then I got obsessed with it, and he stayed on me about it. And so I decided to write a parable. So to weave in all these lessons that I've learned over the last 20 years as an investor and 25 years as a business coach and into personal development and all that. So that's why I wrote a parable. And I wrote a parable because for two reasons. One, I wanted to engage this information emotionally. I think when people read something that's just fact-based, it's great. They get the facts and everything. But I wanted to write something that would elicit an emotional change, that would put people into action, that would push people to go from just learning, especially about investing, about creating financial freedom, or about becoming their best self, to move from that learning place into action. And I think a story does that. It just gets us to be like, oh, I can see myself in this protagonist. I can see myself in this guy. So the Wise Investor tells a story of this guy. His name is Ryan Brooks, and he's a hardworking family man. He works so many hours, though, that he doesn't have time for his wife or his kids or even his life. Then he meets this new friend, and he's a new mentor. And this guy guides him and shows him a new way to financial security for himself, for his family. And he ends up becoming wealthy in more ways than one. It's so a lot of lessons about how the wealthy think compared to poor people, the way rich people operate, how to invest in real estate, all lessons around everything from learning how to house hack, to investing, to putting together a portfolio, to getting into multifamily, to the difference between investing. He goes over this one story of the difference of if he invests $200,000 in stocks, in gold and real estate, and he shows them where that ends up 10 years down the road at the same rate of return. And it's kind of mind-blowing lesson. So I wrote it to inspire not only us real estate investors, where you can have a story that's going to motivate you to not only invest more and be like, kind of like preaching to the choir. It's kind of like, yeah, this is exactly what I'm doing. I'm on the right path, but also to elicit that change around getting the most out of all areas of life. My years as a business coach working with CEOs and entrepreneurs, I saw that there was such a focus on only the money piece. But I also realized that when we get better, when my clients got better in all areas of their life, everything got better. They made more profits. Everything was working better. So that was the premise of this book. And that's why I was excited about writing The Wise Investor. Yeah.
And well, something you mentioned, though, that I think is absolutely critical is the mindset. It's the mindset, right? You're basically trading one life for an entirely different life. I mean, same people are in it, of course, but it's a whole different way of thinking. And it takes a great deal of time and knowledge to bridge that gap, right? I mean, it's a huge chasm. I mean, I've tried to explain it to folks, and they just look at me like I have three heads. Because I used to be the guy in corporate, and I was doing the same thing that most of corporate America did. I thought I was a badass because I had the big house and I was earning a big income as a C-level executive, and I would never do that again. No offense.
But it can be taken away so quickly, right? You lose your job and all that goes, it's like, what's your financial runway?
Exactly.
What's your cash flow? Yeah, it's amazing. And that's one of the lessons that the mentor shares is, talking about how wealthy people think. And that is the mindset thing. It's like you talk to some people and they say, well, my net worth is this, or my salary is this, or I have this much money. But truly wealthy people say, this is how much cash flow I make every month. And this is how long I can go without working, or I could stop working today. That's the way wealthy people think.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Do you think that your first book would have ended up the same way, given what you know today, with all the lessons that you've learned and how to write? And now, of course, I know we talked that you're even narrating this one too, right? But I know you narrated the last one, but you're putting so much energy into this. Do you think the first book would have been that much different?
Yeah, I mean, I hope I'm wiser and smarter than I was 20 years ago. But yeah, absolutely. I've learned a lot. Honestly, the biggest thing I've learned over the last 20 years is humility. I think that cancer scare really humbled me and really had me realize that, I don't have it all together. I still have that inner gremlin that, I grew up I was diagnosed learning disabled when I was 8 years old, and was put in classes for the learning disabled and was teased by other kids. And so I had this inner gremlin, this inner voice in my head that I still have today that says, you're stupid. You're never going to amount to anything, no matter, even though I'm multimillionaire and have this beautiful home in Malibu and an amazing wife and, 2 books and all that, an amazing business. I still have that voice that says, you're never going to be successful and you're stupid. So so I think I've learned a lot through humility, and that shows up in my writing now.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think one thing I know about you is that you do practice a lot of gratefulness, and that helps keep your positive mindset. And because without that, it's very hard to get anywhere to build success in life.
It's massive. And going through that scare of being told I had 6 months to live is really, it puts things in a different perspective. So the biggest lesson I got from that is to not let the little stuff stress me. So it doesn't even like a financial loss. I lost my entire IRA. I self-directed it and invested it into a project in Nicaragua with a developer who ended up skipping town, never did the project. I lost all of it. And it's just so much easier. In the past, I would have been so stressed. I would have been so revengeful, so angry. And now it's just like, that's money. It's really wild.
Yeah. Interesting perspective. Yeah. It's, most people would in fact get really, really upset about it. But, it's only money. I think you realize that, the older you get, the less time you got at the end. Like we're running out of fuse, right? We're running out of fuse.
Yeah. And we're investors. That's what investors do. They make money and we lose money, and you got to be real. You got to be ready to lose some money. It's risk. There's risk in investments. You try not to lose it, right? But it's kind of part of the game. You're putting in based on, your analysis and all that, but still there's a piece of not knowing.
That's right.
You got to be able to roll with it.
That's right. Now, what keeps you moving and improving these days?
Oh man, that's just trying to be my best self, because it's like, that's where real happiness comes from. I've been obsessed with personal development for over 30 years now, since my first Brian Tracy audio cassette program and then Tony Robbins and all that. So I've learned and I realized that the Stoics had it right 2,000 years ago, that the best way to be happy and fulfilled is to be moving toward becoming our best self and getting better. So today I see myself, you hear a lot about this, be your best self, and all that stuff. It's almost a meme nowadays in social media. But I was looking at that and thinking, if I'm really looking at the best version of myself, I drive a Tesla and it's like always getting updated and there's new versions and it gets better. Each new version of software update gets better. So I was thinking about that and I'm like, oh, what version am I? I'm like, oh, wait a minute, I'm version 58.4 right now. So what's 58.5 going to be like, and what's 60.0 going to be like? So that's been my obsession. It's like, how can I just get incrementally better? How can I be more loving? How can I be more present? How can I be more self-disciplined? How can I build my willpower? How can I be a better investor? So all these things is really, for me, that's where the true fulfillment and happiness comes from, is knowing that I'm becoming a better human, a better person.
Nice. Good. Well, Rich, we covered a lot of stuff here today. What would be your one piece of bulletproof advice that you would have to offer for someone listening?
Oh, and in that same theme, I'm just, it's like when I speak, and I share this almost every single time, is that when we get better, everything around us gets better. So you can learn and study all this stuff, and all that is good. But what really matters is that you work on yourself, because if you're not following through, if you're not becoming a more self-disciplined, and if you don't strengthen your willpower, if you don't do what you need to do when you need to do it, none of that education or anything is going to do anything for you. So it's about, changing that mindset, becoming better, and then everything gets better. So work on yourself would be the advice I would say. Work on yourself more than anything.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Love it. All right. And then, of course, taking massive action too, right? Got to do that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. That goes way back to As a Man Thinketh, right? 80% of success is showing up.
Just showing up. That's right. That's right. That's right. It's probably the hardest part for many people to do. They read and they read and they study and they read and they go to the seminars and they go to the webinars and do all that, but without taking massive action nothing will change.
100%. I mean, that's why I have a coach. That's why I have a coach I talk to every Friday, right? And just because, he asks me the questions I'm not asking myself. He holds me accountable. He really calls me out. He holds up the mirror boldly to be like, how are you showing up, Rich? And really has me take a look. So that's the way to massive action, is have someone who's skilled to hold you accountable.
Nice. Love it. All right, guys, if you want to reach out to Rich, you can reach him via his website, fettke.com. Don't forget to check out his book. It's a great book. Check it out. You can download it on Amazon. It's on Kindle now. I think it's going to be on print if it's not already, right?
Yep, it's coming out August 30th in print and audiobook.
There we go. So check out the audio because Rich is narrating it. It's going to be great. So thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next episode. Take care.
You've been listening to the Bulletproof Cash Flow Show. We hope you've enjoyed the show. We know we had fun. Make sure to visit our Apple Podcast page and leave us a 5-star review. We hope you've gotten some useful and practical information from the show. For real estate coaching, events, and resources, hit up bulletproofcashflow.com. Till next time.
No information in this episode should be considered specific, personal, or professional advice. Any investment opportunities mentioned on this show are limited to accredited or sophisticated investors. Any investments will only be made with proper disclosure and subscription documentation and subject to all applicable laws. Please consult an appropriate tax, legal, real estate, financial, or business professional for individualized advice.